All right, welcome, Jazz. How are you?
Pretty well, thanks. I'm above yourself.
Very good. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for joining on this podcast. And I'm super excited to welcome you to our group, I Love Property. And of course, we have audience all across different channels as well. So, this particular one, I am excited because we are having a sales agent for the first time on this podcast. And the idea of doing this with you was to obviously understand the nuances of the industry the way you see it from your eyes, and you being the legend, in the area you operate.
Thank you.
I couldn't have thought about anyone else to invite you, than other than you in this podcast. So thank you so much for joining, and that too on the last minute request.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm absolutely thrilled. And I'm actually humbled that I'm the first selling agent on your beautiful platform. And who
Thank you
doesn't
very much.
love property?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love property. That's why we've given that name, because we all love property. If you're in Australia, you don't love property, something is wrong.
That is so true. That is so true.
So let's start with your introduction, Jazz, a little bit, so the audience will a little bit warm up to whom we are talking to and what's going on. So please introduce yourself. Thank you.
So, Jazz Real Estate is founded by myself and my wife, Lovejeet, and we started the organization in 2019, part of the Eview Group. And Eview Group is one of the real estate independent agents network and independent offices, which has grown significantly in the last 4 to 5 years. We currently proud to have approximately a network of 145 offices across the country, and in our area, on an average, we're looking at selling as a team over just over 100 properties on market and off market per annum. And obviously, the goals to increase by obviously adding innovation. So, Jazz Real Estate, the reason we started with eView, as you know, and above, is all about innovation in real estate. And eView is electronic view to the industry. And this is exactly what Jazz Real Estate is all about, bringing value to our clients and bringing latest technology and human touch to it.
Absolutely, that's amazing. And Jazz, I've seen your journey go through over the last 6 years, because Family Real Estate is also that young, about 6 years old. And I think it sort of almost started in parallel at the same time as
Correct.
yourself. So it is so good to see you in the local area and seeing you grow so quickly and fast. In fact, when we know the weekend comes over and we're driving around the block, we just can't ignore you at all for some reason, because you've got your ads going everywhere.
That's the aim. When we sell a property, we make sure everyone knows about it.
Exactly, and I'm sure that is not missed at all. So thank you so much for once again coming to the platform. And the intention today is to educate both sellers and the buyers today of what is going on in the industry and what you're seeing from your perspective with the experience that you carry. You do a lot of auctions in the properties as well. So let's get some maybe local insights into what it is. But uh, these are the questions we want to cover, but I'm very keen to understand one more thing: how long you've been in this industry before you started Jazz Real Estate EV Group as well, and really what inspires you to do what you do every day.
Of course. Uh, Going back 2008, I started working with a property developer up
Yeah.
in inner west inner city circle. We did a lot of property developments. That company was had a very humble start as well. Back in 2008, we grew it up to about portfolio of 175 properties within Footscray, Yarraville, and the inner city suburbs. And eventually, we got into apartment developments as well. So obviously, property and real estate has been part of my journey. And apart from that, we got into a lot of renovation projects. This is how we add value to our vendors' properties in the outer west, where a lot of the times we see properties which are not really loved that go in the market, and a lot of vendors would leave money on the table. That's the journey that we bring from that point of time. And real estate is probably in our bloods, and from back home, overseas as well. Half of the family is into real estate, and we've been involved in property and real estate back then, and as well when I was young. So apart from obviously property development, thereafter I had an opportunity to work in the outer west, which was Point Cook. after working in Yarraville, Footscray, and Inner West for approximately over 8 to 9 years. Then I started working in Point Cook for a local real estate company, who was also part of a property development firm as well, as you would know. Worked there for approximately about 7 years. And thereafter, before we started real estate agency of our own, which is Jazz Real Estate, it was more of a table discussion where the family thought it's time. Yes, we can do it. Let's just jump in. I wasn't prepared, to be honest. I got thrown into it, but yeah, I got thrown into it. But then my family trusted me on that, and more than I did on my own. But yes, I always trusted in the ability. So that's how Jazz Real Estate came about, where one discussion over a dinner.
Wow, amazing. And of course, I mean, you would have had inherited certain skills, obviously, and experience that you did previously to, give you that confidence to take that big step and start your own business. So, would it be fair to say that your previous work actually helped you make that decision better to come into this?
To some extent, yes. To some extent, the confidence level about the
Yeah,
product, about the knowledge of the marketplace, and
yeah.
knowing that yes, this is the right market for us. That was another reason. And plus, that if we've come too far, we didn't come too far to come that far. So if you've come that far, we got to do something. It was more about then mindset as well, and
Mhm.
about making things happen, that not leaving things to chance. If you have made a decision, follow through it and make sure you do it and you get results. And that's the same mindset that we carry even in our business for our clients as well. If we commit to our clients, we make sure we follow through and see through the results on the other end as well.
Yeah, of course. And it's actually all about the outcomes, isn't it? At the end of the day,
Exactly.
the customer
It's all
experience
about
that
results.
you. Yeah, so you covered a lot of those things, golden nuggets that you do differently very quickly, but we'll touch that a little bit to expand for our viewers. But just before that, let's get to the basics a little bit. So you are a seller's agent representing your vendor, right? Who's selling the property, and you have their best interest to sell the property for them. So, what are some of the things that sellers are looking, when they're selling their property in a real estate agent, that
Mhm.
the attributes that they want to see before they select a real estate agent to sell their properties?
I guess there's different ways to answer this question, but what I would add to it is a lot of the vendors would have different reasons why they choose who they choose. And what I would say is that the clients who choose us as a selling agent, that's a feedback that we get from our clients, is they're looking for someone who's reliable. At the same time, what they want is someone who can actually give them a peace of mind. Most of the vendors or any consumer as such, because the basic fundamentals in a human brain is safety, as we are pretty much part of a pack. And any animal or any human being who's a pack based mind, they would look for safety and security.
Yeah,
Everyone who's looking for an agent, they've already have a reason why they choose a real estate agent to represent them. And number one thing is that comes to their mind is someone who can actually make them feel at ease and they're stressless. That's number one. Number two is our clients normally appoint us to represent them based on the technology marketing and the skills to negotiate.
hmm,
So someone who can actually negotiate and market the property really well, and then create that competition in the marketplace to get them the best possible outcome. At the end of the day, it's about the results as we were talking about before, and it's all
right.
about getting them the best possible sale result. That could be time frame wise. It's not always about the price. Yes, it
Yeah,
is a primary reason for every vendor, but there's a lot of different reasons why a person is selling a
yeah.
property on a website.
Yes. And I guess the difference between an on-market selling and an off-market selling, what are some of the criteria to that actually when you choose a campaign to run? How do you decide that? And
I
if I may
suppose
add,
this, please.
if I may add, why do you go auction as well rather than a private sale? So if you can try cover those elements, that'd be great.
Of course, the number one thing for any property to get sold via method of off market, what we call it in the office here is pre-launch, and we have changed the terminology of an off market to a pre-launch. Now, what we obviously do for our clients in general is different to obviously what a traditional off market sale would be. We always try to start marketing the property within our clientele, within a closed
Mhm.
network of buyers agents as well, obviously, and you're obviously highly regarded in our office. When it comes
Thank you.
down to, you're more than welcome. And with regards to an off-market sale, every time a client chooses us, the work starts pretty much. The work starts
Yeah.
using our technology, state-of-the-art techniques to ensure that the word is now going out. It could be a hot buyer list. It could be a chase list, what we call in the bar in the office. We have a certain set of skills in our reps in the office itself who are always nurturing the buyers who have come through to the open homes, for example. They would be
Yeah.
in touch with them. We would be categorizing them under hot, warm, and cold categories as well. The hot buys and warm buys would obviously get that off market. Then, obviously, before that, it goes to a buyer's agent. So, buyer's agents would have an exclusive access to every listing that is about to go on the market. That's the value that, as a buyer's agent, will bring to a buyer and who's active in the area itself and helping their clientele. And thereafter, the property is always progressed to market unless it's sold prior. As I was
Right.
saying, we
Okay.
do on an average 30 to 40 sales average off market, which doesn't get on realestate.com and get sold before through your network, and of course with the existing buyers that we have into the system. Thereafter, the properties which, either from the perspective of the time frame or perhaps from the price point of view, has not
Yeah.
hit the expectation of a vendor, it then goes on to the market, and it goes on to the full-blown marketing campaign that we will do for a vendor. And why we take a property to an auction depends on a few different factors. There's three methods why we choose an auction. Number one, there's less stock of similar properties in the marketplace, and we know that that kind of property is in demand. That's based on the ground level work. We know the property is unique and property has got some sort of elements that will attract marketplace. Some of the times, the pricing is certainly something that we are obviously looking at, perhaps ensure that the vendors get the best possible outcome. Number three, the vendors' journey, vendors' expectation on the timelines as well.
Yeah.
Some of the vendors don't like to have conditions based on their past experience, perhaps with subject to finance and building and pest. That could be one of the reasons. Some vendors have perhaps seen their friends selling with auctions and they emphasize on going for an auction. There's multitude of different reasons why an agent would go for an auction.
Right. So, you covered that. Of course, the natural path is that once you have a vendor who has signed your contract and they have engaged you, there's a pre-market window, right? So,
Correct.
if you just expand a little bit on that pre-market window, having access to properties in the pre-market window, the price point that is set in that pre-market window before it goes live, the idea is to save the cost of it going live, right? If it's going to go live or if it's going to go online anyway, the idea is to save that cost for the window, right? The marketing costs and all the sort of thing, and the idea of time frames, right? But let's say you don't have enough, as you said earlier, it's all about trying to create the competition and get the maximum price because that's what you want from a seller's point of view, as being your job on the ground. But if you don't have enough offers in the pre-market, and let's say you've got one or two offers, or maybe two or three offers, but they're not strong enough. So
Right.
is the decision more based on chasing a price point, or is it actually time, or is it both?
Sometimes a bit of both as well. And it also then depends on a few different factors. Where
Yeah.
now I'll probably give you this answer in a perspective. Let's say, for example, property XYZ Smith Street, catch up with a vendor. We have the discussion. The whole framework is planned on that day itself during a strategy meeting. On the
Yeah.
strategy meeting, we sit down and we go through each and every step. We actually show our vendors exactly this is how the first day, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth, and seventh day would look like. And if we
Yeah.
don't hit the result in that time frame, we are planning to go on the market. We will still get the photographs done for a property before it hits the pre-launch as well. At the end
Right.
of the day, we want to make sure the property is presenting in the same way it would potentially go and present in the market itself. So there's no difference in that. So everything is sent to our clientele with pre-market. And from the perspective of the pricing, yes, there could be a reason why the vendors may be expecting a price point which is potentially higher than the average market, which is, and there's no harm being ambitious in sometimes, and we've specialized in getting our vendors above market in many cases as well. It also then depends on the vendor's timeline. Some of the times I've seen a vendor where the property value is here, and they've also accepted an offer which is here pre-market as well, because they
Hmm.
have the next journey to go to as well.
Yes.
In fact,
Yes.
recently we had about day before yesterday, where a vendor had purchased something, and they had a very restrictive timeline.
Right.
Where the expected was about 1.5, and they accepted an offer at 1.47. They're still walking away with a good chunk. It's
Yeah.
just that, yes, for them, timing was more important than that extra 30 grand, which again is not guaranteed that they'll get it in first week on the market, or a second week,
Yeah.
or a third week in the market as well.
Right. So I
2 months.
guess it's fair to say that maybe every vendor has a very different ask and requirements, and the
Yes.
campaign is sort of tailored to that situation to understand where can I get the best outcome for your client, essentially, right?
True.
Now, when you're working with your vendors in that scenario and you're looking at those options that have been put in front of you with your vendors, that this is how I want to do it, and you are giving your consultation, you covered a very good point at the beginning that you're actually giving them certain tips about the property, right?
Mm.
To best present itself. So, what are you doing different in your company that most real estate agencies are not doing it, or something that is valuable to a vendor to choose you as their preferred agent?
Great question. There's few different things.
Yeah.
As an estate agent, I always look from a perspective of being a marketeer first, number one, and a consumer.
Hmm.
If I'm an estate agent selling and buying the properties in the area, let's say for an example, as a buyer, how would I see that property? And I always tell a vendor, ask a question, and we are very consultative in that approach. We first of all sit down, and it's not just about listing a property, it's about understanding the journey of the vendor and asking them a lot of questions to understand and explain what we will do to add value to their journey. And at
Hmm.
the same time, knowing that this product, in obviously respectful way, is their family home or our investment property,
Yeah.
to see the potential. Now, again, I'm blessed to have that long experience in property development where we used to do our own projects. We
Yeah.
would never sell a property which we feel would actually then go in the market, would lack interest, and then we pull it back and then do the works and go in the market back again. You've lost the time, you've lost that spark. So,
Yeah.
what we do some different to a lot of our stakeholders in the marketplace is
Yeah.
some of the times understand the price point, understanding that marketplace, understanding that school zone,
Hmm.
understanding the price point of that particular price of that estate, understanding what would be a potential clientele would look like and what exactly they're after. If we
Hmm.
can create a product which suits the marketplace, to
Yeah.
some extent we go beyond the paint and carpet, as a lot of people would obviously be thinking around that what a real estate agent would do is paint, carpet, staging, for example.
Yeah.
Not just about that, we go extensive. We make sure the property is actually looking 10 out of 10, and it's actually attaching and creating an emotional element. It could be adding more lights in the home, it could be adding pendant lights, it could be adding some features, it could be adding the change of the color scheme, it could be the flooring, and it
Yeah.
could be the garden, plus then how you decor the stuff out as well. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that we project manage for our vendors and bring that renovation experience, and we ensure that product is positioned in the best possible way, which attracts emotional element. And there is a classic example of something that was done recently, and it was exceptional. So that is something that we feel again, uh, and it's not just about what we're doing now. For us, it's all about innovating and then doing 10 steps more in the next year or so. Again,
Yeah. And
is
I guess a lot of this comes down to, the emotional aspect of buying for the buyer's point of view, right?
exactly.
And if you can make the thing look good and shiny, there's more money in it for the vendor, right? And is that right?
Of course, like let's say for an example, you go to a cafe,
Yeah,
right? And there's no presentation. There's finger marks on the glass. The trays are empty. The cupcakes looking old. Coffee machines got dust, and they're charging you $6 for a coffee. Would you buy it there next time?
never.
Versus you go to a cafe, there's good ambience, you feel good, and the charge is $6.50. It will not hurt, even though it's 50 cents more than that. It's about the experience, consumer. It's not about what product it is. It's about the consumer behavior. It's
Yes,
psychological.
yes, it's
Even if
true.
it's an
But
invest, even if it's an investor who doesn't have emotions attached to the home because they're not going to live in there. In general, for anyone to see value, the presentation always is critical.
100%. And I think, you wouldn't go to a party without dressing up yourself. That's how simple it is. You don't rock up in your pajamas unless it's a pajama party, right? So I
True that.
get the idea. We all want to look good, so why not shine up your house and then sell it for the coin that you want to make out of it, right? So I get
True.
the idea. And I think it's a basic, it's just that people don't have the time and the skills to invest into that thing. They might have the money, they just don't know all the people. They don't want to take that headache to go and actually, renovate that, and first they don't even know what to renovate actually. That's going to give them that price point
We
essentially,
were
right?
having
And this
this
is where
the
you're
other day
bringing the
as well.
consultation. Sorry.
We had this discussion the other day as well,
Yes, we
and
did.
that's very common. If you ask
Yeah,
me, if you ask me about a hotel, there
yeah,
was an opportunity where I had no idea what to do. If I had experience, yes, I would have jumped on it. That's fair. That's
yeah.
quite fair. You don't have to know anything and everything. It's just that if you have access to the right professionals who you like and trust, the journey becomes easier.
Sure. By the way, in that coffee result, I would have still bought that same coffee for maybe $4 where they were selling for five, and may have paid maybe 20 cents more for the good cafe. Being a buyer agent on the other side.
Of course, of course, of course.
So that's really insightful for a lot of people to consider that how important staging and renovations can be and can completely change the outcome of the property. In fact, actually, when we buy properties for our clients,
Mm,
especially for investment purposes that we are doing, we are buying that actually has a potential that can actually give them that edge when they're selling. Because
true.
in a brand new property, there's those options don't exist, right? And especially the recycle time frame is 3 to 4 years. You can't do nothing with a brand new property, really, right?
True.
But when you actually have potential to add on, that extra element and that extra kick, I think that's where you are really making the cream on top of the actual market comparable properties that you are actually calling as an average market price point.
Exactly. And I think from a buyer's agent and a buyer's perspective, look, don't get me wrong. I do work to get my vendors exceptional outcome, but when I'm on the opposite side, I want the best value for money.
Of course.
And I'm on the hunt of a property which is needing a lot of love.
Yep. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
as a buyer, I would be looking at what other people are not looking at buying. Some people don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, but if they're on their own without a buyer's agent or professional help, I think people actually fear more that why is this property sitting on the market for that long? There must be something wrong with it, right?
Exactly.
But
And that's
to
the
me, I
your
see that as an opportunity. Let's understand the problem and see if we can fix it and make more money out of it. I do believe that if you don't have a problem, you can't make money if there's no problem in front of you, right? If you want to make money, you
spot on.
buy problems and you solve the problems.
Spot on. I'll give you an example. I had a phone call which I felt that that person needs a buyer's advocate in that situation where someone told me about a property that they really like it. It's been on the market for about 3.5 months, and there must be something wrong with the property. And uh, my consult was to have a buyer's advocate to ensure that they can actually do some due diligence for you. It was in a different part of the country, a different city, it's sometimes just about the price versus the condition of the property. There's nothing wrong with the house. That's where a professional buyer's agent would come in and have a discussion, because real estate agents would actually feel more comfortable if a property is sitting on the market, let's say for a month and a half or two, and the audio versus video is not matching. I'm talking about price versus the condition.
Yeah.
Then an estate agent would actually feel more comfortable opening up with a buyer's advocate than
Correct.
end consumer, because for them that's a direct client and they don't want to say things that they don't want to say to jeopardize the sale of that property. With a buyer's advocate, it makes a lot more easier. They know it's a qualified buyer. They know the buyer would actually, if the buyer's advocate is reaching out to the estate agent and above, you know that highly likely, not a guaranteed, but highly likely there would be a deal.
Yeah. And I think that's where my next question really comes, that, what differences do you find, working with an individual buyer who's knocked your door versus actually a buyer agent when they're coming to you? What are the key things that you see as a different, and what's your preference really when you are now seeing this as a new trend with people now engaging buyer agents to buy properties?
Number one thing is ease is something that every estate agent would actually feel
Yeah.
dealing with the buyer's advocate. My personal experience, and obviously we've done a lot of work together,
Yeah.
and we've also seen a lot of buyers agents now in the marketplace. The trend has changed, and there's a
Yeah.
reason why. And the trend sustains one industry because there's a need, there's a gap, and there's a
Yeah.
gap that you guys are filling in as well.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more faster for a vendor, a purchaser, a selling agent to close the sale.
Mm.
The buyer's advocate has already done the research that a purchaser would take 2 to 3 weeks after inspecting a property, and an estate agent would be chasing them or perhaps following up for 3 weeks, where there's 20 questions that the estate agent, after hanging up the phone, will say, "Are you serious? You'll ask just that question?" And the buyer's agent would probably come in. And of course, no question is a wrong question. It's just that if they don't know, they don't know, respectfully. But again, at the same time, as a buyer's advocate, you would actually do all that legwork. You make life
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, and to your point, very first part that you said, ease. I still remember the property that we bought as soon as you had your very first open recently in Point Cook,
Yeah.
and I just whispered in your ear my price point, and being the very
Yes.
first person to walk in through the door, whilst you had everyone else lined up later in the evening, we bought
Correct.
the property straight off because the offer was given literally me walking into it, and we are done with it, right? So that's what you want. You want fast stuff going, moving stuff really quickly, getting that
Exactly.
confidence going here.
Correct. And the moment we met, and we know we had lined up buyers there, but I knew that this property is going to get sold tonight.
Yes.
Right.
And there were what good 10, 14 people walked in after that. I don't know. Actually, I left after that. So
We I remember the open home. There were about we had two open homes on the same day. One had about 14, the other open home had about 11.
yeah, and it's just walking distance from a very popular school in Point Cook. So, it
Yeah.
actually, because I knew that this market, and this is just for the audience who's listening to all this, because when you know that it's a good property in a good location, time is of essence, right? How
Correct.
to capture that time and capitalize the trust, the relationship that you have to put the right price forward, right? Can
True.
actually make or break your deal, and can actually also dictate what price you're going to finally end up paying. If you're the first one and thinking that there is no competition, right, I'm going to offer something very low and wait for
Mm.
others to put more offers, you're only going to end up paying more
Eventually.
eventually,
And
right?
sometimes end up buying a wrong property. I've seen that a lot.
Oh, of course, that's already happening, right? And this is why, the choice of streets, the choice of suburbs, areas to suit their goals, a lot of those things are missing. People are just going out on realestate.com, or they wake up and they just go and buy anything under the sun. And I
True.
think there's a lot of education piece around how sellers are seeing. One of the things that a lot of buyers, and especially first home buyers, are who are very naive. There's a lot of obviously questions, basic questions that come along to you. How do you find working with first home buyers? I mean, especially with the patience level around them, and what sort of three top tips can you give to the first home buyers, or those who are there in the market in current circumstances, especially knowing interest rates have just come down?
Number one thing I'd say is every clientele is different. You have first home buyers, then you have your second home buyers, then you have your upsizers, downsizers in the marketplace. Then you got your investors, then you got your developers. Not more so developers in Point Cook as such, given that the age of the homes and obviously the block sizes as such, unless we're in a different pocket of Point Cook. But to answer that question, a lot of the first home buyers, we are blessed in Point Cook. A lot of the first home buyers do a lot of research. They're savvy with that. However, they do lack one of the main elements, which is negotiations and putting that deal together.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of the things where I find it. No, I wouldn't use the word difficult, but I would also find I'll probably use the word that's somewhat challenging in some extent, where them feeling that this property is right for us, that the timeline that takes to get a property
Mm.
sold is lagged. Obviously, since the interest rate rises as well. Now, on an average, you'll find in every property that we sell, we meet different people of different personalities. There's three offers, and one common thing that I find in a first home buyer who ends up buying the property has done their due diligence fast, they've made an offer fast, they've made the decisions fast, and they've taken the jump. So
Right.
that's the only difference I would say in the first home buyer. But yes, there's of course difference between a first home buyer without a buyer's advocate, and there's a difference between a first home buyer with the buyer's advocate as well.
And what is that difference, if you don't mind highlighting? Because a lot of first home buyers sees it as a big cost of a buyer's agent to hire. They probably don't even have the money to give buyer agent, but and they think, I can spend 6 months in the market to go and learn about everything before I can go and execute. So, what is the key difference that you see, and as far as confidence is concerned, and the key elements that you're seeing as a difference?
If I see past experience with the first home buyers, for example, who've bought a property and then perhaps made mistakes, that's obviously, as you know, mistakes are highlighted more than a success.
Yeah.
Right now, a first home buyer doing research for 6 months, missing out on the right asset or a right property in the right location, has done analysis, and then they had analysis by paralysis by over analysis, right? And that's also one of the reasons why we do auctions, right? So it is one of the reasons why real estate agents love auctions. It just puts that paralysis by over analysis away. You don't have much time to sort of think. That's the decision making is fast. Now, coming back to that question that we were talking about, is where the first time buyers would potentially make a decision of researching the market 6 months. By the time they realize, I heard so many times that I met a first time buyer fifth month and they said, that property that I saw with you first month, I should have bought it. I should have bought it. That went for a decent price and it was a perfect property for me. I have not been able to find exactly the same thing. It's not one person, I would say, hand on heart, there's hundreds I can count. And I've also had people who've probably come to maybe a table to make an offer as a first home buyer. They would potentially not go up by, let's say, 5 grand. And I'm not talking about paying overs. I'm talking about where there's fair competition about a property, and ends up buying a property which is, let's say, 20,000 less than what they would have paid for the property that we were selling, let's say, for an example. And one is coming to my mind where this person bought a house about 20,000 less and was pretty happy, and was pretty happy about telling everyone that he's secured a property for less than what you guys were talking about. Now, year down the line, the person has spent nearly 45 grand on the property, and market shift, the property is currently sitting at approximately $595,000 versus what he paid 620 for it. Sometimes it's not
Wow.
about the price; it's about the
Yeah.
right asset.
Yes, absolutely. And it may be the suitability of your home, that you can call it home, versus actually saying it's highly priced or whatever. And the price is at a point in time, right? Price
Correct.
shifts every day. and
Of course.
in a running market, it's so hard to actually pick a price that is right for the property. It's all about the value that you actually perceive out of that price. Essentially, that's really where I think it comes down to.
Absolutely. And I know clients that you've helped in Queensland. Personally, I know them. And you've helped them fast tracking their further property buying journey because of buying the right asset.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sometimes not just about the price, it's about the right asset as well.
Actually, you know what? There's a funny story to this. Actually, just recently, one of our clients who bought two properties back to back last year around same time frame, in two different states with us, and then he decided that maybe the third one he wants to save some fees for buyer's agent, so let him do a course. So he goes out there and actually does a course,
Okay.
in August, and then the course finishes in 1 or 2 months, and then he spends the next 4 months trying to find something that he can probably find a property that he can buy as a third investment. After 6 months of that whole journey, I get a call in January, which is 2 months ago now, and it was almost like an SOS call. And the call was, "Hey, I'm ready to buy the third property. Send me your link and I'll pay today." Right? I'm like, "What happened? Why is this so much in rush?" So anyway, that happened, and the person came on board. And I asked him a question before we started the search again, that because we do a strategy for our clients. So we asked him the question. I said, "What prompted you to go so urgent about this whole thing? Because I felt like you were rushing into this, buying this third one with me. What happened?" He said, "I wasted 6 months.
Mm,
Right? I know the value of opportunity cost. The market has gone up $50,000.
true.
Right? I could have capitalized that in June last year itself. Right?
Mm,
And guess what? This is mid-January, and he's settling after 1 week from now.
there you go. There you go.
Right?
That,
On
that
his
that's
third
the
one.
thing. The time that person has actually spent 6 months has still lost capital growth.
100%. So he's like, "I can pay you your 15 grand rather than actually having a loss of $50,000." And people
Mm,
don't see this intangible value of opportunity cost,
correct.
right?
And
And that is
it's
same for
just
first time buyers as well.
a course. People think that they can do a course and go and buy a property. Buying a property is not just about knowing which product, it's
Right.
also about how to negotiate, how to
That's
build
right.
relationship, your network over the past many years with your local real estate agents, and
Yep.
your access that you've actually created for a pre-launch or an off-market properties, for an example. The other thing is that for an estate agent as well, they would only send an off market or a pre launch to the buyer's agent they actually trust. We have plenty of them on our books, but we only send it to handful.
Absolutely. And you know where the deal will get done, right? You know the quality of the clients. These are the things that I actually see that engaging a buyer's agent, the difference I have seen, the confidence a real estate agent has on a buyer's agent with a good relationship is that the last thing the vendor wants is a default on that contract, right? Which basically it means your finance hasn't gone through your conditions, you've got to come out of it, go back again, start again,
Correct.
right? It's quite a nightmare, because once the contract is signed, that's the next worry. Is he going to pull out?
Correct.
Am I going unconditional or not? Right? So
And I'll
by
give you an
working with,
example. Sorry to
yeah,
cut you off. I'll give you an example where, recent example, um, a buyer's advocate, I don't know, was that how they operate, or probably that's out of naivety, probably, where there was a lot of changes that were asked for after the fact that contracts were being signed, and that's during transition from conditional to being unconditional, which I feel a professional buyer's advocate would actually then do all that before entering into a deal. And what that buyer's agent actually costed their client is the sale of that property or the purchase of that home, because a lot of the changes, which were not really a great experience for our vendors, and then thereafter, of course, uh, the time came when they've asked for an extension. That was again part of their tactic, which is again a good buy. That's the difference between a good buyer's advocate and a not so good buyer's advocate as well.
yeah.
You, as I said, you can wear the same sort of clothes, but you're not exactly the same from inside.
Yep.
And the same
And it
applies
comes
with
down to experience.
doctors, lawyers, everyone.
It comes down to experience actually, Jazz, because back in 2019 when I started, I mean, real estate agents or that type of the industry is well matured as a role that you play in the real estate industry. So there's a known role and a very matured role that is structured. For us, it was completely all new, right? So when I started 2019, there were hardly any buyer agents in the market, and no one even heard about it. I had a challenge back then. Why should someone really pay me tens and thousands of dollars? What am I
Yeah,
doing different that they can't do on their own? And now, and it's other buyer agents in the market, and there are so many now getting flooded, and this is shaping up
true,
right now. I wish all the best to people who are just starting out, who have less or little experience. But the point is, people can see it. The agents can see it. The clients can see it. People try to save $few thousand by going to buyer agents who are just starting their business or maybe their work, and they charge 4 or 5 thousand, or maybe in one case I've heard even they're doing it for free. So there is
mm.
obviously what you pay for is what you get.
There's nothing for free. It'll probably cost you somewhere.
That's what I'm saying, right? So, and this is where I think in both cases,
Mm.
the experience matters,
Correct.
right? The depth of experience matters because there's cost to things to avoid, and if you're
True.
given advice and if you're given the consultation and you've been told avoid these five things because there's heavy cost linked with this, and a knave experienced seller agent or buyer agent wouldn't really know what to consult on. We really
True.
didn't know, right? I mean, in
Exactly.
your case, you said you're consulting clients with what to
Mm.
renovate, what should you be doing, right? You're actually what you're doing there. I think you're giving a lot of confidence to your clients to say, hey, you know what, you should be spending $20,000, and
True.
these are things you should be doing because I know this market so well that if you
True.
did these things and this becomes a bit of a characteristic in your property, I can sell it better. Let's say there is a pool, right?
True.
There is a character to that whole property, right? And if
Mm.
you highlight the character differently, there's a wow element right there. For example,
Exactly.
people
True.
can't pick that up. For example, right? Um,
Exactly.
I know your barn doors, for example, the ones that you talk about, right? A lot. I've seen your
Yeah.
videos
Love
doing those,
the.
right? So you know, someone who doesn't have that experience cannot even give that consultation, right?
Correct.
And that confidence that by spending 20 grand, you can get extra 50K, for example, or whatever that might be, right? I mean, number is immaterial, but point is that you're trying
Exactly.
to. Same thing from a buyer's perspective. We are saying, you know, act now. This is your time. This is how you should do it. So that
True that.
education piece is given. You can cut your time. You can get things going, and you can actually get the right deal across the table for a win-win situation.
Now it is time to now, or it's definitely going to be a bit too late. I mean, again, this it's never late buying a property, but it's perfect window for purchases.
Yeah, we've actually got one client right now on our books, and he's taken probably we've shown him about 15, maybe 18 properties so far that we're trying to buy. And I
There you go.
said, and I had to intervene, in the conversation to understand things. But I said, what's stopping you to buy? I mean, are you telling me not a single property out of 18 was suitable? He's like, oh, I should have actually bought the one that I saw. There were a few of them. I should have bought that one. That was really a good deal.
Yeah,
So,
well,
the confidence levels are all about they want to see a few things before they
true.
make a decision, but then they are also not happy with the fact that they did not make a decision previously,
True that.
right?
That's a human. It's a human tendency.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think a lot of the slack can be cut by using the right professionals to
I was
really.
say the same thing because at the end of the day, the right professional is not just a person who's actually show them the property. Will actually first of all understand and guide them. That education piece right at the early stages could perhaps make them feel that yes, looking at 20 different properties is not going to guarantee the right property.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and I think from your perspective, we see when we see real estate listings, or normally a buyer sees a real estate listing. Just to sort of talk about this as well, because price is really important. People are very conscious about what I'm paying for the property, right? usually there is a range, right? And a range is decided when you're bringing the property on the market, for example, right? What does that range really mean for a buyer? What are you really trying to sense out of that? Because the natural thing for me or any naive buyer is that I want to offer below the range, right? Which I'm sure the real estate agents also know about it. How do you decide that range? What does that range mean? Why is it not a number?
I guess they would be. Yes, in some cases, there's single price as well. And there's different reasons why there's a range. And it is also, again, let's put a perspective. Let's say, for example, XYZ Smith Street about to come on the market. And we always understand what the vendor's expectations are. We provide our estimates. And of course, we try to understand where the vendors are and what are the expectations from their side as well. Now, a range could potentially be over what they want. There's no right way to find it out. At the end of the day, it could be dependent on the market conditions. It could be dependent on the property type. A property could be worth 1 mil, and the asking could be 1,020,000 to 1,050,000 because there's no recommended retail price on an asset.
Mm-hmm.
It's market value plus the agent's ability to get them more than the market value.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The primary reason they engage a real estate agent is to make the thing seamless. It's not just about getting them 100 grand more. Yes, everyone wants more, but everyone is expecting X amount of numbers. Sometimes the vendors don't know why they want that number,
Mm.
that they want it. And some of the times a range is advertised where, let's say, for an example, based on the comparable, property A sold for 950, property B sold for 975, property C sold for 968, for example. In the area, there's three comparable sales, and the current vendors is given the comparable, and they know they kind of sit around sort of mid to sort of high nines, let's say, and they might advertise the property between 975 to 1,025 in the hope that they actually now get above what the last three sales have happened, because that's already occurred, that's gone, they're not in the market at the moment. Then
Correct.
also we have to look at what's in the marketplace as well, competing against that similar product. And also at the same time, vendors expectation. There's so many things that come into play, then we mix it all together, chop and cheese, and then we sort of find a fine balance. Now, yes, the purchasers sometimes do tend to offer less than the indicative range. That may not get them the property in some cases. It is again the question of understanding the comparable sales, and if that asset suits you, and if you have the appetite, and are you really wanting to miss out for a certain price. I always say to everyone who's buying within my family, my friend circle, if they ask me what's a fair price, and the question and answer to the question is, what is that number you really don't want that property to go above, and what price you would not feel bad if it goes beyond this and sells and you don't get it.
Right.
Now, price is you what you pay, value what you get.
Correct.
Sometimes people would then, as a buyers as well, they would understand, yes, they're asking more, but then if I were to go and find a property, I have not found something similar in that location in the last 6 to 12 months. If they're asking more, let's just end the search and buy it. Happens a lot of times. And a lot of the times it will always be a replacement cost analysis in Point Cook in our area, in our core market. So there's always a thing where there's cases where the vendors are expecting 1.2, whereas the property is actually worth 1,020,000 or 1 mil, for example. And market would find its balance. The property and its value will find its balance when it goes in the market. As an estate agent, we are not magicians. We add value to get them the highest sale price, but again, at the same time, unless the market can supports it, there's always a buyer who's prepared to pay, estate agent who's prepared to negotiate, and an ability, and the vendor who's ready to accept. When these things come together, there's a sale.
Yeah, and you're just missing one buyer agent in between that link. Yeah, but that's true.
Of course, I mean, at the end of the day, a buyer's agent would actually make that process a lot more easier. Now, you were talking about the price range. So obviously the analogy that I was giving was around the price point. Now, that could potentially be an education piece from a buyer's agent as well, where a buyer
Yeah.
would come in and say, I would probably offer less and see if I get lucky. Either a supportive buyer's advocate would pop in and say, look, that's where the comparables are. This is well priced property. It's actually not overpriced. A buyer's agent would know it much faster.
And you've just nailed that, Jazz, because what happens is a lot of people come to me and they're like, how much will you negotiate for me on a property so that I can justify your fees?
Yeah,
And most people have this notion in their head that buyer agents are some magicians, and there's going to be a heavy negotiation that can occur with using a buyer's agent. What they're
true.
missing on is there are elements that if you went to that property on your own, you might overpay because of the emotions, and all the buyer agent is really trying to do is keep you on the market value for the property, right? And take the emotions out, do the comparable as you said as quickly as possible to really understand the value of the market. And let's say in your case, as you said, the vendor's expectation is 1.2 million on a property, whereas the market is sitting at 1.02, for example. You know
Mm,
that, right?
correct.
I know that because I've done the comparables. You know that because you have also done similar comparables. We might have a different reading of how we perceive the number, but
Correct.
there is definitely a difference, and we know this property is not at 1.2 million. So in your example, what we are saying is when two professionals know that, that property will likely stay on the market for longer unless someone really can connect as a value for the property and buy it emotionally, for example. Right? And that becomes a new market number,
Exactly. Correct.
right? So that
Correct.
property sells for 1.2 million, if at all it sells. Another one
Yes.
will sell for close number to that, and that's a new market number,
True. And I
right?
always say to everyone as a purchaser and a vendor, the one sale would not dictate the whole market. That could be that one emotional person who didn't have a buyer's advocate
100%. And,
pay the
and
overage.
this is why, and as you said, the market is made when the seller and buyer is okay with the number. The number
Mm,
can be higher and lower as long as you're getting the bank loan. But the point is that are you buying at the right price for the current market you're in?
correct.
I mean, we've had a bit of a lull in Victoria right now, coming to the market itself right now. But and now the markets are going to likely rise. That's current view that I have for
Already started.
Melbourne and Victoria.
It has already started. Yeah.
Are you seeing that in Point Cook right now? Is the
Of
market
course.
getting better?
Last 2 months. Yeah, of course.
Last 2 months have really picked up. Yeah. Auction heat is increasing as well.
Auction numbers are increased. Yes. Number of inquiries has increased by a lot.
Yeah.
Per property open for inspection numbers have increased. The absorption rate has become much more faster as well.
Yeah.
Vendor
Yeah.
discounting has gone down.
Correct. So I guess that means that what you're saying is these are all metrics to actually really evaluate how the heat of the market is. So as
Correct.
compared to 6 months ago, when I could actually get the same property, like maybe I could negotiate if that vendor in your case was 1.02 expecting, sorry, 1.2 expecting, but we know the market is 1.02. Maybe 1.1 could have sealed the deal, or maybe 1.05 could have sealed the deal, knowing that if he wants to sell it and he's really want to sell it for whatever reason, then
Correct.
I could have taken the property away. But now that the market is shifting again, we are getting into the point where we've got to be conscious about that. And markets
True.
are changing again right now. Right? 6 months ago was different, now it's different. So the approach to put an
Yes.
offer on a same property where you're still expecting the similar discount in a slow market versus a rising market is very different.
Correct. And right now, the vendors are prepared, most of them, unless there's a high motivation, most of the vendors are prepared if they're not getting what they want, or perhaps not getting the fair value, for example, they're prepared to rent the properties for another 6 to 8 to 12 months and
Yeah.
rethink about selling in the next 6 to 12 months once there's more cuts.
Yeah.
Now, again, that could be a gamble because in Australia, anything can happen.
Look, I mean, I guess we are not economists, but we're reading markets every day and multiple
Correct.
markets. So I've been making predictions on what RBA is likely to do based on our understanding. Again, there's no one knows what RBA will do, but it's just getting the level of confidence, and we've been predicting things, and it's been going okay. I still think that there will be another two rate cuts right now this year, and that's probably going to give a lot more confidence to sellers and buyers. And I think
True.
we will see a different end of 2025 as compared to the last 2 years, not just for
Yes.
Victoria, overall. The markets are going
Exactly.
to shift. I think all boats will rise, but how much, which area, what will happen will all depend on the market in that particular local area. But I think
Exactly.
it's positive as far as this year is concerned, the way I see it right now. And you
Yes.
said, even in Point Cook, where things haven't really moved much over the last years, it's held its value. It hasn't increased, but it's held its value. Yet now we are seeing the buyer activity improving and increasing, which is good. So in the current market, with Point Cook, are you actually right now seeing a lot more home buyers, or is this investors, or is this a mix of, is the investors increasing? What's the activity?
Bit of a mix. It's a
It's
bit
a
of a
mix.
mix. You'll definitely see local investors. You'll see overseas and interstate investors as well. Not so
Yeah.
much of overseas investors as such, but yes, overseas buyers who are other expats. They're coming back to the country as well. There's a lot of those, and there's a lot of interstate investors. Sydney and Perth and Queenslanders. They're super active in the area at the moment.
Yeah. And I think that's what we saw the last 3 years. What happened is, because Victoria was a bit of a dud with political play in it, and the
Mm,
rules that were designed around, deterred a lot of investors around it. So a lot of the money went away from New South Wales and Victoria into states like South Australia and Perth, and those states have really gone up. And now, the median price points are ahead of Melbourne, which is
true that.
quite shocking for a state like, Victoria to see that. But having said that, it is at a price point which is a lot more affordable right now. So the it's sort of a cycle, and we do see that the interstate buyers are going to see Victoria as a hotspot to really figure that out, just from affordability standpoint, because cities become too expensive. We're having these conversations every day. Why would you buy something for 1.3, 1.4 million on 300 square meters, that to 50 kilometers away from Harbour Bridge, where you can actually get something decent enough in Victoria for close to about $1 million, or maybe even less, depending on how far you go from Melbourne outer, and secure something that is more palatable and affordable.
Exactly. And when the party was on in the other states, savvy buyers advocates like yourself, they were active here,
Yeah.
right? Because you know what they say is when others are zigging, you zag.
Yes, exactly. And we can time the market being professionals, so we know where to enter, when to enter. Make
Yes,
people have no idea. They're not trying to. It's like day trading versus an investor who's doing it for the long term, right?
I think that it
So
works well.
yeah, absolutely. And it's all about hope, right? But when you using the right ecosystem, and I think
Mm,
it's really important to have the right A team, because
correct.
you're playing with big money, right? And it's your wealth that's
True.
is linked with it. Even if you're a home buyer, your
Yes,
first home is going to dictate how fast you can buy your next investment.
exactly. And I suppose from a consumer point of view, if you are a consumer and you are trusting a buyer's advocate or a selling agent, for example, leave the work to them. And at
Absolutely.
the end of the day, if you're putting money onto them, you let them do their work, they will definitely get you the best possible outcome.
And trust them.
100%. If you don't like and trust someone, I always say, even on a listing presentations table, every time I list a property, I always say, if by the end of this conversation, if you feel that we don't like and trust each other, then we would shake hands and wish each other all the best and move on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jazz. This was so insightful for our listeners. So I guess just to summarize the three, key points and or three tips that you're probably saying is: one, from a seller's point of view, choose the right professional, trust your professional, and do something with your property. Who can consult you what you can do to maximize its position in whatever current market conditions there are, and trust that person's advice to take you forward, right? And go with
True.
your gut feel, of course, to see what that is. And from buyer's perspective, you can spend all the time in the world to keep researching on your own, which is great, but there's opportunity cost attached with it. So it pays off to actually have someone professional who can deal with another professional, negotiate well at the right market price point, and take the emotions out and actually get you the right deal and secure the deal faster than actually wasting time on table there.
Treat it as your business, not as a transaction. If you're an
Love it.
investor, as an investor, you're a business owner. You're buying properties, that's your product. If you have multiple properties, you are buying stock of multiple properties. Now, if you're a business owner and you run a restaurant, you would not be at the front counter serving the clients
Yeah,
and then rushing into the kitchen and cooking and then serving the meal on the table. You would have the right people. Same thing, leverage the experience of others. If you are an investor, you're running a business. For buying, you have the right accountants. For structuring, you have a property lawyer. You got to have your right buyer's advocate, buyer's agent, or trustworthy consultant. And when it comes down to selling, you need to know who's on your side. And the relationship doesn't stop when the transaction happens. It starts well before that.
true. That is so important. That's absolutely golden tip, right?
So
And that's what I said. You need to have that A team to make yourself successful, right? The right broker who
exactly.
can structure the right loan, the accountants, the
We're
financial
adding
planners if you need
about a broker.
broker. That's what I'm saying. It's important. Finance, can't forget finance.
Sorry,
Otherwise, we're
brokers.
going to situation. Sorry, brokers. That's
Exactly.
what I'm saying. Yeah,
True
so
that.
I think having and this is the ecosystem we bring for our clients. We've got all the professionals under the panel that we need to work with to get them from A to Z.
Yeah,
And I think it is so important. The whole message here is that you need to understand the relationship between
true.
the seller's agent and the buyer's agent that is being formed, and a
Correct.
good relationship that can actually work in the best favor for both the seller and the buyer as well, right?
Exactly.
Whilst this is completely professional, the two people are playing their role in the market.
Yes.
Seller agent is actually representing the seller's interest as much as possible to get at the highest price. The buyer
Yes.
agent is trying to work in the best interest to get at the right price. It may
Correct.
be below the asking, it may be at the market value, whatever it is. It can sometimes be conditions, it can sometimes be the terms on the actual loan, on the contract, whatever it is. But it is about trying to make sure there's a right due diligence around it. You can act
Correct.
fast and you can quickly close the transaction.
I know we're over time. On that, I want to touch on something. And we should be really open about it. That when people think that if they have a buyer's advocate, they should get a property 40, 30, 50, 20 grand lower than the asking price or lower than what they think the property is worth. Now, what you think what the property is worth and what the property is actually worth, they're two different things. And then the third equation is what the vendor thinks the property is worth and what the property is actually worth.
Yes,
Now, you have to have an open mind. And obviously, it also goes to a vendor. It not just applies to a purchaser, that a property can be purchased at a fair market value. It doesn't have to be undervalued. However, it's all about the right asset. After working in property development and obviously buying and selling my own portfolio and assets as well, that the right asset would actually make you money in the future. It's about what you invest in now would actually then reap the rewards in the next 4, 5, 7, 10 years. That 10, 15 to $20,000 on an average that you pay to a capable buyer's advocate or an accountant or broker, whatever that case is, may not be seen now, but
that's
you
right.
see that in the future because when you sell the right asset, you will actually double that. Or in some cases, the fees that you've paid, the value that the person has added, would actually be seen in the future. And the number two thing is your offer could potentially be within the range. But as a selling agent, I can tell you now, it still doesn't guarantee that you will definitely get the property. I've seen many times, Anubhav. In fact, a recent example where a purchaser was that close to the top end of the range and he still
Mm.
missed it.
And is
It
that
was
because of the timing, or is it just because
number one,
vendor
the
just
time.
wanted more?
Number one is the timing. The type of negotiations they were doing was thousand,
Fine.
$2,500, right?
Both.
And that gave an at that time they had an opportunity to seal the deal in half an hour by just going 10,000. Boom, get it. That person initially was negotiating 1,500, 2,000, 4 meetings, and we were reporting it back to the vendor. The vendor's got an impression that if this person is so overanalyzing about few $100s and a couple $1,000, how would this journey be like during subject to finance, building inspection? They might give me heartache or headache during that process as well. Now, or during the final inspection, someone else comes in, makes an offer unconditional for $10,000 less than the top end. He was that close to the top end. The vendor was like, you know what? I'll go with the unconditional offer. I'm happy with 60-day settlement versus his subject to finance and building inspection and that back and forth. I would take that offer. And the other offer was through a buyer's advocate.
Right. And that makes a huge difference in the
Yeah.
confidence of the seller to work with that buyer during the transaction. And like I said earlier, I mean, the more conditions there are, there's already a problem there. But secondly, the thing is that we need to have confidence in both the transactions. And the only two people that really know what's going on, to be very honest, are the two professionals who are working in that transaction.
Correct.
Because being in the same side of the industry, it pays little to actually, hide things between the two sides. So people don't realize that we could get insights from the seller agent as a buyer's agent and the truth that actually is the reason what the seller agent is doing and what is their motivation to sell, rather than actually you going directly and thinking about maybe what the agent just told me. Whilst he's telling the right thing, maybe they feel that he's lying to me or I don't
Yeah.
trust this agent, right? So if you have that
You'll only
problem
find it
that
when
you're not
somebody
buying at
else
the
is
right
someone
price,
else.
correct, correct. It's the confidence, it's the trust which is missing for buyers. And if that's the case, I think there's value in actually hiring the right professionals and getting the job done. So Jazz, I can't thank you enough for this session because
Come on, I know we
the
went over
things
time.
you have shared. No, no, that's all good. I mean, we can go for another half an hour. That's not the problem. I'm conscious of your time. You're a busy man, but at the same time, the insights you have shared today, it gives a lot of insights into for people to really take things down and really consider that who would be your professional, who's going to do this, right? And who's going to either sell or buy, what you should be considering, and really go into the relationship with the
Mm.
trust that whatever money you're paying or you're expecting is going to get the right outcome as long as you choose the right professionals to do the right work for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. It was lovely night talking to you tonight. And we will certainly continue to keep having more sessions. And, we already planned another one, I think. So we can do
Yeah.
that sometime in the future. But I really appreciate your time today.
Most welcome. Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you so much for joining as well. And the ones who will be watching now, choose a right professional and choose a right buyer's agent to assist you with buying.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jazz.
Thank you
See
so
you.
much. Thanks, Anubhav. Thank you.